I am Zach Trupper. I will be doing the opening statement. I will be directing Devin Lynn, and I will be crossing A.G. Prout. My co-counsel, Lane Garrett. He will be directing Detective Kennedy Shepard, and he will be crossing Reagan Bushel. He will also be doing a closing statement, along with my other co-counsel, Derek Nagler. He will be directing Dr. Marion Schwartz and crossing Dr. Jen Sharp. Yes.
Thank you. What about your witness?
My witnesses, Your Honor. This is Detective Kennedy Shepard. We have Devin Lynn and Dr. Marion Schwartz.
All right, tell me their real names.
This is Morgan Fowler, who is playing Detective Kennedy Shepard, Angie Vasquez as Devin Lynn, and Aria Upton as Dr. Marion Schwartz.
Thank you very much. All right, defense?
Your Honor, before we introduce our team, we ask that the court take note of Stipulation 7, which says that both Dr. Marion Schwartz and Dr. Jen Sharp are qualified expert witnesses, and both can testify to each other's statements as well as all relevant information they would have knowledge of.
Any objections?
I do not object to this.
It is noted.
And at this time, we will introduce our team.
You may.
Your Honor, members of the jury, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Sell, and I, along with my co-counselors,
Kelly Scandoni
and Natalie Jones, represent the defendant, Reagan Bushel, in today's case. Today, our witnesses will be
My name is Marga Mooney, and I am Jen Sharp.
My name is Cole Zelzak, and I'm A.G. Prout.
My name is Jessica Tomlinson, and I'm Reagan Bushel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Is everyone ready to proceed? Motion statements? You may.
Next, Your Honor. I, along with my co-counsel, Derek Nagler and Lane Garrett, will be representing the state of Florida. Now, jury, what would you do for $20 million? Now, some people would go far, and others would go too far. Reagan Bushel, the defendant, has gone too far. Becca Abels, the victim, was an exceptional college student until the night of April 29th, where she was brutally stabbed at the Woolly Wizard Music Festival, and now she lies in a hospital bed in a coma. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence will show that it was Reagan Bushel, the defendant, who stabbed Becca Abels to silence her. Once Becca got back from the Woolly Wizard Music Festival, she was to report Reagan for cheating. If that report would have gone through, Reagan Bushel would have lost a $20 million trust fund. So in short, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Reagan Bushel had 20 million reasons to stab Becca Abels. Now, you will not be able to hear from Becca Abels because she is currently still in a coma in the hospital. But you first will hear from her best friend, Devin Lynn. Devin will tell you about the political campaign strategies class that Becca took. She will tell you about an email that the defendant sent Becca of a plagiarized paper that the defendant had hopes for Becca would too plagiarize this paper. But she, Becca, was working too hard for the Lion Prize, a prize for outstanding, hardworking students. So, anytime Devin had ever talked to Reagan about the Lion Prize, Reagan had always told Devin that she was not going to run for it, as she did not need it. But when Devin found more about this prize, she found the list of names who were the finalists for this competition. She not only found Becca Abels' name, she also found Reagan Bushel's name. When she told Becca, Becca was devastated. She burst out into tears and started screaming things like she was going to report Reagan, or that Reagan was a fraud, and that she was going to start treating Reagan as Reagan was treating her. So Becca wrote a report to the Student Judicial Affairs Council. You will then hear about the day of April 27th, which is when Devin and Becca walked into a coffee shop to see the defendant's best friend, A.G. Prout. Becca approached A.G. Prout, and she started screaming at him about reporting Reagan to the Student Judicial Affairs Council for cheating. You will then hear from Devin about the night of April 29th. She would tell you about Becca and Reagan's confrontation at Shark's Organic Brewery. Devin will tell you about how Becca just wanted to get away from Reagan, so she just walked out of the bar. Reagan then walked up behind her, grabbed her by the shoulder, turned her around, and started pleading with her. You will then hear how once again Becca just wanted to get away, so she just walked away. You then will hear about Devin Lynn's testimony that will put Reagan Bushell in the same area of the festival as the attack during the same time. You will finally hear from Devin Lynn about the gruesome scene she had to walk up to see her best friend, Becca Abels, lying on the ground, unconscious, with blood all over her. You will next hear from the leading detective of the case, Detective Kennedy Shepard. Detective Shepard will tell you that when she went to go and interview Reagan after the attack, Reagan did not seem distraught or sad at all about her current friend's situation in the hospital. She would tell you that when she went to go look for a knife that Reagan had owned, it had been conveniently stolen on the night in question. And when she went to go look for the clothing that Reagan wore on the night in question, it had been conveniently incinerated before the police could have gotten it. Now you will finally hear from our expert witness, Dr. Marion Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz will tell you many different pieces of evidence that all point to Reagan Bushell as the assailant. She will tell you about the knife that was used in this case, how it was 4 inches long and serrated, and how Reagan's knife matches the wound, or matches the knife that inflicted upon this wound of Miss Becca Abels. She will also tell you about a cotton fiber that was found around the wound, how it was made of American Pima cotton, the same type of material that Reagan Bushell was wearing on the night of the attack. You will also hear about the time frame of the attack, how it was between 10 and 11:30, the same time that Reagan was spotted around the scene of the crime. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there are 2 parts to every crime. Was there a crime committed? There is no question as Becca Abels lies in a hospital bed in a coma. And did the defendant commit the crime? The defendant had the motive of $20 million. The defendant's knife matches the wound that was inflicted upon Miss Becca Abels. And the defendant's fibers from his clothing were a match to the fibers on the wound. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we ask that after you hear all of the evidence in this case, you return a verdict of guilty on all charges. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense?
An incomplete investigation coupled with inconclusive evidence is insufficient to eliminate reasonable doubts. The prosecution has just told you that you will hear today that Reagan Bushell had 20 million reasons to stab Becca Abels. However, we expect you to hear today that rather you will have 20 million reasons not to convict Reagan Bushell. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Sell, and I, along with my co-counselors Kelly Scandoni and Natalie Jones, represent the defendant, Reagan Bushell, in today's case. The prosecution has just woven you an elaborate story of betrayal, anger, and greed. However, if that were all there were to it, then we would not be before you today. In any criminal case, the burden of proof lies with the prosecution and never leaves their table. It is their responsibility to prove each and every element of their case beyond any and all reasonable doubt. In a case such as this, for the prosecution to meet their burden of proof, the evidence cannot afford discrepancies. For if there are discrepancies in the evidence, or lack of evidence, then reasonable doubt exists. We expect you to hear today that Reagan Bushell and Becca Abels were best friends, that they played together as children, went to high school together, and even moved to the dormitories at Wheeler University together. We also expect you to hear that during their senior year of college, Reagan Bushell plagiarized a paper and then offered that paper to Becca Abels for her to use. Now, the prosecution will base their case today around Reagan Bushell's trust fund. We expect you to hear today the prosecution will tell you that when Reagan Bushell unwittingly upset Becca Abels by applying for the Lion Prize, that she believed her only option was to stab Becca Abels. However, we expect the evidence to show you today that Reagan Bushell showed no propensity for violence. In fact, you will see today how Reagan Bushell tried to talk out her problems with Becca, and did manage to work out her problems with words. Reagan will tell you herself today that after talking with Becca Abels outside of Shark's Brewery at the Woolly Wizard Music Festival, she did not think that Becca Abels was still going to report her for plagiarism. Further, Reagan Bushell will tell you today that at the time that Becca Abels was stabbed, she was at the complete opposite end of the music festival, and we expect this to be corroborated by other witnesses today. We also expect you to hear today that Detective Shepard based her entire investigation on the testimony of Devin Lynn. But we expect to prove to you today that Devin Lynn was jealous of the relationship between Reagan Bushel and Becca Abels. We also expect you to hear today that Detective Shepard never considered Devin Lynn the only witness today who will be able to be definitively placed at the North Road at the time of Becca's attack as even a suspect in this case. Furthermore, you will hear from another witness today, A.G. Prout, who also had a reason to want to stop Becca Abels from reporting Reagan Bushel to the school. You will hear today that not only would A.G. Prout have been expelled if Becca Abels came forward, but you will hear today that A.G. Prout actually became physically violent with Becca Abels when Becca confronted him with this possibility on April 27, 2011. Despite this, and despite the fact that Detective Shepard even had the opportunity to personally interview A.G. Prout, there was only ever one suspect in this case, and that was Reagan Bushel. The prosecution will rest their case today on testimony about cotton threads and a knife. We expect you to hear today from both the medical examiner of Becca Abels, Dr. Schwartz, as well as a renowned forensics expert, Dr. Sharp, both of whom will tell you that there is no way to say with any degree of certainty how those cotton threads got on Becca Abels' clothes. Furthermore, we expect you to hear that there's no way to say whether or not Reagan's knife was the knife that caused Becca Abels' wound, as the prosecution never even examined Reagan Bushel's knife. Dr. Sharp will tell you today that there are in fact many, many other types of knives that could have caused Becca's wound. Although the evidence in today's case might have been enough to eliminate the prosecution's preconceptions, we expect you to hear today that it is far too incomplete to eliminate reasonable doubts. An incomplete investigation coupled with inconclusive evidence is insufficient to eliminate reasonable doubt. Thank you.
We understand that the mock-trial rules do not permit an objection during the opening statement, but have we been able to object? We would have objected to lack of personal knowledge of their testimony that they told you, Dr. Sharp will be able to tell you about the many, many other knives, as she is not stipulated as a knife expert, she's stipulated as a forensics expert, which does not give her the knowledge to know how many other knives there are out there to match this.
Your Honor, and although we cannot officially respond to opposing counsel's objections because we cannot make objections, but if we could, we tell you that Dr. Sharp is simply stipulated as an expert witness, not as a forensics expert, nor any other kind of witness. Therefore, this matter must be decided during the course of the trial.
Thank you. And that's also good. All right, the prosecution ready to call their first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution calls Devin Lynn.
You are under oath. You may proceed.
Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Devin Lynn.
And what school did you go to most recently?
Well, I'm a senior at Wheeler University this year.
And what was your most recent dormitory?
Hayes.
And did you get to meet anybody in Hayes?
I did. I met Becca. She's my best friend. We're on the same floor. Well, we were on the same floor.
And what kind of things did you guys do together?
You know, we really bonded over our love of music and movies, but especially school. We both loved working hard at school.
Did you ever get to meet any of her friends?
She did. She had this childhood friend. His name was Reagan. Or her name was Reagan, I'm sorry.
And did you get to ever meet any of Reagan's friends?
Yeah, she had this friend named A.G.
Relevance?
Your Honor, we're simply setting up predicate to show how she knows the different witnesses in this case.
Overruled. You may proceed.
Once again, did you get to meet any of Reagan's friends?
Yeah, she had this friend named A.G.
Do you remember taking a class, political campaign strategies class?
Yeah, it was nearly impossible.
And did Becca take the same class?
Yeah.
Did Becca ever receive any help?
She did. Reagan sent her an email that she got from AG. It was an essay for the class.
And did Becca use this?
No, she was working towards this prize called the Lion Prize. It was for honorable and hardworking students, and she didn't want to risk her chances at it. Like, she was always working on her essay for it and stuff like that.
Was Reagan ever going for the Lion Prize as far as you're concerned?
No, he always said that he didn't need it.
Did you ever find any more information about the Lion Prize?
I did. I went to see my I'm sorry. I went to see my professor and I saw the list of the finalists. Becca's name was on there, of course, but so was Reagan's.
And did you tell Becca about this?
I did. She was devastated. She burst out into tears and she started shouting that Reagan was a fraud and she was going to start shooting Reagan.
Hearsay?
Your Honor, this falls into the excited utterance exception of hearsay, as Becca Abels, the witness, had stated that she was crying and she started screaming out these type of things as she was under the stress of just hearing the information of her friend betraying her.
Objection sustained. Let's move on.
Move to strike the statements, Your Honor.
Did you ever see, or what happened on the day of April 27th?
Becca and I went to a coffee shop.
And did you see anybody in the coffee shop?
We did. We ran into AG.
And what was Becca's mood when she saw AG?
You know, she's still really hurt and upset that Reagan would betray her like that.
And so what did she do when she saw AG?
She went up to AG and she just let Amy know. She let him know that he was going to be reported for the plagiarism.
And what had happened after that?
He grabbed her by the shoulder, or by the arm, and I took his hand off of her. I'm sorry, her hand off of her, and we just left before anything else could happen.
What happened on the day of April 29th?
We went to the Woolly Wizard Festival.
And what time did you get there?
I would say it was about 6 o'clock.
And what did you do when you first got there?
Well, we went to our campsite, which was in the North Road, and we decided to walk around, and then we went to go get a drink.
Where did you go get a drink?
Sharks Brewery.
And did you see anybody at Sharks?
We did. Reagan came out to us, and he started shouting at Becca that she can't do this to her. He was livid.
And what was Becca's reaction to this?
I think she just kind of wanted to get away because she left the brewery and she walked outside. Reagan went after her and grabbed her by the shoulder and turned her around. It looked like she was still yelling at Becca, but I couldn't hear anything. It looked like Reagan was pleading with Becca.
And what happened after this?
Becca headed back towards North Road and Reagan just kind of went on her own way.
Where did you go?
I was going to go get a drink and then head towards the stage area to watch the performers.
And did you walk around the festival much?
Yeah, I did. Becca and I both walked around it as well.
And would you recognize a map if you saw one of the festival?
Yeah, we walked around it.
Your Honor, at this point, may I approach the witness and hand the opposing counsel and you exhibit pre-mark exhibit A of the prosecution?
All right, show the opposing counsel first, please.
Do you recognize this?
Yeah, it's a map of the layout of the festival.
And how would you know where things were at the festival?
Like I said, Becca and I walked around it.
And would you say this is a fair and accurate representation of how the festival was laid out?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, at this point, the prosecution would like to enter Exhibit A into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Without objection, it is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
You may.
Now, after going to the stages, where did you go next?
I headed towards the food area to get a drink.
And did you see anybody at the food area?
Yeah, at about 10 o'clock I saw someone who looked like Reagan heading towards the North Road, by the lighted area.
How did you know it was Reagan?
I've seen Reagan many times. She was wearing the exact same clothes. It was very good.
And according to this map, where was Reagan relative to
She was heading towards the North Road and Becca's body was found here, so in the same area.
Thank you. No further questions. Or, no further questions. I meant to take it from the jury. I apologize. May I proceed? What did you do after you saw Reagan?
Could you rephrase that question?
Where did you go after you saw Reagan?
Like I said, I went to get a drink and I texted Becca, but she never texted me back.
And so what did you decide to do?
I decided to head back to our campground.
And what did you see when you got there?
When I got there, I saw my best friend on the ground. She was covered in blood.
And what did you decide to do when you saw your friend on the ground?
I called 911. I didn't touch her. It was horrible. There was blood everywhere. I didn't want to mess up any possible evidence or hurt her further.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm sure it was Reagan.
Now, you were Becca Abels was your best friend, right?
She is my best friend.
However, you weren't Becca's best friend, were you?
I don't see why it couldn't be. Why can't she have more than one best friend?
But isn't it true that Reagan Bushel was Becca Abels' best friend?
Like I said, why couldn't I be her best friend too?
But isn't it true that you were jealous of the relationship between Reagan Bushel and Becca Abels?
I used to be jealous, but the more I came to know Reagan, I decided I wasn't jealous anymore. I'm not jealous anymore.
But you were, correct?
I used to be, yes.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about April 22nd, 2011. On that day, you and Becca Abels ran into A.G. Prout at a coffee shop, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Becca approached A.G. Prout and just let it, right?
Yes.
She told A.G. that she was going to report him to the school for plagiarism, right?
Yes.
And at that point, A.G. Prout grabbed Becca Abels, didn't he?
Yes, I removed his hand. Her
You
hand.
had to pull A.G. Prout's hand off of Becca Abels, didn't you?
Yes.
And luckily, you and Becca Abels managed to leave the coffee shop before A.G. could do anything else, right?
Right, I didn't want anything happening.
Thank you. Now, you say you know that on the day of and the day after this confrontation, Reagan Bushel called Becca Abels, right?
Yes, he did. He called and texted. Or she called and texted, I'm sorry.
And you say you know this because you recognized Reagan Bushel's phone number, correct?
Yes, I saw it. She showed it to me when she got the text messages and the calls.
What is Reagan Bushel's phone number?
Why would I have that memorized?
Well, isn't it your statement today that you recognize Reagan Bushel's phone number?
Yeah, caller ID. Why would I have that memorized?
But isn't it your statement today that you recognized Reagan Bushel's phone number?
Yes, because Becca has showed it to me, but I don't have it memorized.
So you would recognize it if it were shown to you today?
Yes.
So if I gave you 4 options, would you be able to recognize Reagan Bushel's phone number?
Yes.
Okay.
Show counsel if you're going to show that to the witness.
Oh, no, I don't want to read these phone numbers. Sorry. Option number 1, 222 311 4589.
No.
Option number 2, 555 985 4222.
No.
Option number 3, and please try to just.
I'm looking at you.
Thank you. 555 985 9955.
No.
555 986 2222.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you also say that Reagan Bushel repeatedly emailed Becca Abels, right?
Yes.
And you say you know this because you recognize Reagan Bushel's email address?
Yeah, she showed me the email when she got them.
Well, what is Reagan Bushel's email address?
Again, why would I have that memorized? Reagan and I aren't exactly best friends for me to have her email address memorized.
Ms. Lynn, you would agree with me that in order for us to really understand that you were able to see the connection between the email that Reagan Bushel sent back to Abels and the other emails, and Reagan Bushel's other email address, you have to be able to recognize this, correct?
Your Honor, witness has already tested, I'm objecting, Your Honor. The witness testified that that she does not have it memorized. She's answered her question that she does not have it memorized, yet she has testified that Becca did show her this email. And
Response?
Can I ask exactly what opposing counsel is objecting to?
we're objecting to ask some answers, Your Honor. She did ask, do you have Reagan Bushel's email?
Your Honor, it is true that the witness has already answered this. However, my question was, is it important for you today to be able to say for sure what Reagan Bushel's email was, as you were claiming to be able to connect 2 separate sightings of the email address?
All right, the objection's overruled. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you have anything?
Thank you. And so, it's true, just to be clear, you can't tell me today what Reagan Bushel's email address is.
Like I said, I don't have his current email address memorized.
Okay. Now, I'd like to talk to you about April 29th, 2011. Okay? Now, you say you saw a confrontation occur between Reagan Bushel and Becca Eagles, right? However, there was an entire music festival playing in the background when you overheard this conversation, correct?
Yes.
And after this confrontation, you say that Becca Eagles walked away towards the North Road, right?
Yes.
Now, Becca confides in you when she's upset, doesn't she?
Yes.
However, you're saying today that when your best friend walks away towards the North Road, you head in the complete opposite direction as her to get a soda?
I'm sure she wanted some alone time. I mean, I don't know, like, sometimes you just want alone time.
However, you didn't even want to see the bands that were playing at this festival, did you? So,
I decided to walk around,
okay.
check out the other performers.
I'd actually like to talk to you a little bit more about your whereabouts at the time of Becca's stabbing, okay? Now, you say you saw Reagan Bushel walking towards the North Road toward the campground that night, right?
I'm sure it was him, her.
However, it was pitch black at the time you say you saw this person, right?
It's a music festival. There's lights everywhere.
But isn't it true the only lights you had were a few lights along the North Road?
It's a music festival. There's going to be lights everywhere. And it was brightly lit when I saw her.
Is it your testimony today that there were other lights besides those along the North Road?
It's a music festival. There's lights everywhere.
Do you recall getting an affidavit?
Yes, yeah.
In that affidavit, you were told to tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were also told to include all relevant information?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you recognize a copy of that affidavit that's shown to you today?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm now approaching opposing counsel with the witness's affidavit. Both pages. Permission to approach the witness?
Granted.
Now, Ms. Lynn, this is your affidavit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is your signature on the last page, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, can you please find for us in this affidavit where you said that there were additional lights along the North Road?
Well, it says that it was well lit by the lights along the road and the prison was only about 30 feet away.
Okay. So the only lights you had were lights along the North Road?
But it's a fair stipulation to say that there was more than lights. I mean, it's a music festival. There's going to be lights everywhere. You're not going to have people walking around in the dark.
But, Ms. Lynn, you have to agree with me that the only lights you specifically mentioned in your affidavit were lights along the North Road?
Your Honor, according to the mock trial rules of evidence, she is allowed to make any fair inferences from the affidavit. Therefore, it's against the rules to therefore get her impeached on something that is not in her affidavit. It's not, you may not do that under the rules.
Overrule that, you can pursue this one.
Yes, Your Honor. So, once again, Ms. Lynn, isn't it true that in your affidavit you don't say that there are any other lights besides the lights on the North Road?
Yes, but it was still well lit by the lights.
Okay, Ms. Lynn. Now, isn't it true that you also only briefly saw the right half of this person's face?
But I've seen Reagan many times. I would know what Reagan looks like.
But when you yelled Reagan's name, this person didn't respond, did they?
I wouldn't have responded to me either.
However, you screamed this person's name, right?
I yelled.
And this person didn't look at you, did they?
Well, she was walking quickly, and like I said, I wouldn't have responded to me either.
However, you have to agree with me that there's no way for this person to know whether it was you or someone else calling this person's name, as this person was facing away from you at the time you called the name.
Well, I have a distinctive voice. Reagan's heard it several times.
Okay, excellent. Now, isn't it also true that in order for you to have seen this person that night, you yourself had to have been within at least 30 feet of the North Road on the night of Becca's attack?
I was in that area getting a drink. Yeah, I was within 30 feet.
Thank you. No further questions at this time. Permission to approach the true
You
affidavit?
may.
Thank you.
Do you need that affidavit on cross?
Your Honor, no.
I mean, redirect, any redirecting?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go right ahead.
Now, the defense has brought up a big deal about your spotting of Reagan Bushel around the scene of the crime. Can you explain how you know it was him?
Reagan
Thank you.
was wearing the exact same clothes. And like I said, I've seen Reagan several times to know what she looks like.
And what clothing was she wearing at the time?
Shirt and khaki shorts.
No further questions.
Thank you, Ray. We'll get to that. Are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Kennedy Shepard to the stand.
You are under. You may proceed.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Hi, I am Kennedy Shepard. I am a detective for the Emerald City Police Department, and I have been a detective for 5 years.
How did you come to be involved in this case, Detective?
On April 29, 2011, I was undercover at the Woolly Blizzard Music Festival, when I got a dispatch call at 11:35 saying that a girl had been seriously injured at one of the campgrounds.
Did you go to the scene of this injury?
Yes, with the paramedics, and we arrived at 11:45.
What did you discover when you arrived there?
I found the body of a girl lying next to a blue Tudor Honda, and there was blood on her sweater, and it had been torn in the chest area.
Did this attack look like it could have been a robbery?
No, I ruled out a robbery because she still had her money, her cell phone, and her credit cards on her body.
Why would this rule out a robbery?
Because usually those are things that would be taken.
Are these valuable things?
Yes, they are.
Did you talk to anyone in the surrounding area?
The person who made the dispatch call was still there, Devin Lynn.
What was her demeanor at the time?
She seemed pretty shaken up.
Did she have anything to say about this incident?
She told me that the victim was back at Abel's and that she'd been having problems with this one student, Reagan Bushel.
When you were in the area, did you discover any weapons of any kind?
No, I did not, but I called the forensic unit.
Did you eventually talk to Reagan Bushel?
Yes, I did. The next evening, I went to his parents' house where he was and interviewed him.
What did he have to tell you?
He told me that the supposed argument that he and Miss Abels had was simply a disagreement over the lion prize that they've both been going for.
Did he tell you that he saw the defendant, excuse me, my apologies, did she tell you that she saw the defendant, did she tell you that she saw Becca Abels that night?
Yes, she did.
Did she tell you that she had a disagreement with Becca Abels that night?
Yes, that it was a disagreement and that apparently the only reason they were shouting was because of the music.
Did she talk about any knives that she owned?
She had owned a large Worland 550 folding knife, but it had been mysteriously stolen by the time I had gotten there.
Did she tell you what clothes she was wearing that night?
I was informed that she was wearing a light blue Pima cotton long sleeve shirt and khaki shorts, and both had been incinerated earlier that day, conveniently.
Did you go and buy a new Pima cotton shirt?
Yes, I went and bought a new Pima cotton shirt from Ocho Grosso, and I also secured a Worland 559.
Did you turn those into the forensic team?
I gave them to I gave them to Dr. Marion Schwartz.
Did you ever have any opportunity to speak with A.G. Pryor?
Yes, I did. Before I went to Reagan's parents' house, I went to his apartment and his roommate was there.
Did you think A.G. Pryor could have committed this crime?
No, I did not.
Why?
Because none of the evidence I secured pointed to him. Pointed to him, yes.
Who did the evidence point to?
All of the evidence I received pointed to Reagan Bushell.
What evidence pointed to Reagan Bushell?
The knife that had inflicted the wound on Miss Becca Abels was a 4-inch serrated knife, which is consistent with the woolen 550 folding knife that Miss Bushell had. And the fibers found on her body were human cotton, which is consistent with the shirt that she was wearing that night.
When you spoke,
Objection, this witness is giving an opinion that is required only by experts. And this witness is not an expert in this case.
Your Honor, I asked the witness why she thought that Mr. Bushell committed the crime. I'm not asking her to give an expert opinion. I'm asking her to give her opinion as a detective.
All right, it goes to the weight of the evidence overruled.
When you talked with Miss Bushell, did she tell you about anything she had done that day, the day you talked with her?
She had the clothes that she had thrown away. She had apparently thrown them away with a bunch of other clothes, and when I checked with sanitation, they had been incinerated.
Were those the clothes she wore at the festival?
Yes, they were.
Anything about her car?
When I went to her car, it is a luxury Canyonera. It had been detailed earlier that day for the interior and exterior.
Did the Emerald City Police Department ever receive a report about a stolen knife
No,
from Miss Bushell?
no, there was no report filed.
Did you eventually, this was all the night after the attack on Miss Abels that Miss Bushell threw out the clothes to clean the car?
All of that happened the morning of the 30th, and I arrived there the evening of the 30th.
Did you eventually arrest Miss Bushell?
Yes, I did, on May 1st.
Nothing further.
Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you arrived at the scene of Abel's stabbing at 11:45 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Now, the only witness present at the scene was Devin Lynn, correct?
She wasn't a witness, she was just the only person who called the dispatch.
Yes.
Who called dispatch.
Right. So you then interviewed Ms. Lynn, didn't you?
Yes, I did, for 40 minutes.
About circumstances surrounding the stabbing, the relationship between Becca Abels and Ms. Bushell, correct?
I asked her to tell me what she knew.
Yes. And after you interviewed Ms. Lynn, you decided to investigate Reagan Bushell, correct?
Yes, I did.
So isn't it true that after interviewing just one witness, Reagan Bushell was a primary suspect in your mind?
Yes, he was, because the evidence I had just secured from the interview pointed to him.
So that answers my question.
Like I said at the beginning, yes.
And then, after that, you investigated the rest of the campground, correct?
Yes, I did.
You found no evidence that you linked to the attack.
No, I did not. That's why I called the forensic unit.
You found that 5,000 people had attended the festival that night, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And that 30 other arrests had been made that night for violent crimes, correct?
Only 27, and not all of them were violent crimes.
Are you saying drug offenses such as drug dealing, drug abuses are not violent crimes? Thefts, assaults, other crimes like that are not violent crimes?
Assaults, yes, they are, but some of them were just break-ins, and they did not end in violence.
Nonetheless were classified as violent crimes in your affidavit, correct?
Sure.
Now, isn't it true that there were other assaults that night?
Like I just said, yes.
And isn't it also true that that you only sought out 3 people to interview before deciding to arrest Ms. Bushell, right?
That is correct.
The first interviewee being Ms. Lynn, correct?
Because she was there at the crime scene, correct?
And immediately after that, you decided to interview Ms. Bushell, correct?
No, I tried to interview Ms. Bushell, but ended up interviewing Mr. Prout.
Oh, that's right. And you interviewed Mr. Prout concerning the relationship between Ms. Bushell and Ms. Abels, correct?
Yes.
And then you interviewed Ms. Bushell herself, right?
Yes, I did.
She was very compliant with the investigation, wasn't she?
Yes, but she did not seem distraught.
She was nonetheless, she offered to let you search her entire house, didn't she?
She did. And all of the evidence that I was searching for had been conveniently incinerated or stolen.
Yeah, you found that it was not unusual for Ms.
Ms. Bushel to rid her, to dispose of her clothes once or twice a year, right?
Yes, but it was very convenient at the time that she did.
And you found that it was not unusual for her to get her car detailed?
They did their car detail every now and again.
Yes. And
But again, the timing was very convenient.
now, after you interviewed Ms. Lynn, do you want to confirm your Isn't it true that Ms. Bushel's location at the festival from 9:45 to 10:20 was corroborated by at least one eyewitness?
Which eyewitness were you speaking of?
The one that came forward to tell you that she saw her from 10:45 to 10:20, Sasha Payne.
Sasha Fain came to me after.
Objection. Hearsay, Your Honor.
The question did not call for hearsay, Your Honor. I asked a yes or no question.
Right, respond to the question.
Will you ask it again, please?
Isn't it true that her location was corroborated by at least one eyewitness?
That was very inconsistent with the evidence that I had already secured and after Ms. Bushel had already been arrested, but yes.
Yes. And when you searched Ms. Bushel's home, did you find a bloody knife?
The knife had been conveniently stolen
But you didn't find one.
because it had been conveniently stolen. That is a yes.
You do not know that that is the reason you didn't find it, correct?
Excuse me? Well, I mean, will you ask the question again? Or in a different manner?
Did you find any bloody clothing, Dr. Shepard? Mr. Shepard? Ms. Shepard? Excuse me. Did you find bloody clothing?
I did not. It had been, all of the evidence I was looking for had been incinerated.
So isn't it true that you found nothing at all in the home of Ms. Bushel, yes or no, that could link her to the stabbing of Becca Abels?
No, but it had been conveniently stolen or incinerated again.
Did you then search the home of A.G. Prout,
No, I did not.
the home of Devin Lynn?
No, I did not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
May I redirect, Your Honor? Once again, who was it that the evidence in this case pointed to, in your opinion?
All of the evidence I received pointed to Miss Reagan Bushel.
Objection, asked and answered.
Stay. Move on.
Why did you not search Prout's home?
Because Prout was not a prime suspect. He didn't seem to have any reason to have motive towards doing this.
Did Ms. Bushel have motive?
Yes, she had a lot of motive.
What motive?
She would have been kicked out of school and she would have lost a $20 million trust fund.
Why? You spoke with Ms. Lynn.
Yes, I did.
Why did it seem Ms. Lynn had nothing to do with this crime?
Because it was her best friend. She seemed so upset when I got there.
Did Ms. Bushel seem upset when you arrived at her home?
No, she was not distraught at all.
Nothing further.
Are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state witness called Dr. Marion Schwartz to the stand.
Schwartz, you are under oath. You may proceed.
Please state your name to the court.
I'm Dr. Marion Schwartz.
And what are your qualifications?
I received my undergraduate degree in forensic science as well as my medical degree from Wheeler University. I then completed my residency at Emerald City Hospital, where I worked with criminalists and pathologists. After that, I obtained a job at the coroner's office, where I've been working for the past 32 years. I've also been published in numerous medical journals on wound and fiber comparison. I'm also the current president of the Academy of Forensic Scientists, and I've testified in over 100 assault and battery cases.
And what did you do to prepare for this trial?
I went over all of the case facts, including witness affidavits, stipulations, medical reports, as well as conducted all the tests on Becca Abels.
Thank you. Now, when was Miss Abel stabbed?
She was stabbed sometime between 10 and 11:30 p.m. on April the 29th.
Objection, Your Honor. While we have stipulated Dr. Schwartz is an expert, we have not stipulated as to what expertise she was tenured in. We ask that opposing counsel lay that foundation.
Your Honor, I just have her list all of her qualifications.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
They have not asked for her to be tenured in a specific field.
Your Honor, she is a medical expert, as she has stated through all of her qualifications.
And the question pending is what?
What time Miss Abrams was stabbed? Having examined the body, she has knowledge and extensive medical expertise. She has knowledge of such things.
All right, you'll need to lay that predicate. Let him ask a few more questions, and then I'll entertain your objection if he doesn't cover it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now, specifically, could you please give me your history of medical qualifications?
Right, I've been working at the coroner's office for 32 years. I'm also the chief medical examiner for Emerald City Hospital, and over my career, I've seen many of these kinds of wounds.
And what is your current occupation again?
I am the chief of medical care for Emerald City.
And what does your occupation entail?
It entails that I look over all of the happenings in the hospital, including people that have come in that are stabbed and many other unfortunate victims like Ms. Becca Abels was.
Now, again, could you please tell the court when Ms. Abrams was stabbed?
From what I have examined, I believe she was stabbed sometime between 2 and
Objection, Your Honor. The opposing counsel has improperly laid the foundation as to this witness's being tenured in a specific field. They have not asked the court to recognize her as an expert in a specific field.
All right, well, I think you can pursue her knowledge of that fact on cross, and I'll allow you to do that at that time, but overrule.
Thank you. Could you please continue?
Yes, from what I have found, I believe she was stabbed sometime between 10 and 11:30 p.m. on April 29th, 2011.
Your Honor, I would now like to approach the witness and opposing counsel what has been pre-marked as Exhibit B.
You may.
Do you recognize this?
Yes,
And what is this?
it's a diagram of Ms. Abels' stab wound.
And what does it show?
It shows where she sustained her wound and from the front view of the victim and how long and how deep it was.
And how did this come into existence?
I drew it myself.
Thank you, Your Honor, I would now like to move to admit this as Exhibit B.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
May I publish to the jury?
You may. Without objection, he is admitted.
Could you please show the jury on the diagram where Ms. Abrams was stabbed?
Right. Ms. Abels was stabbed 6 inches above and 2 inches to the right of her navel. It was a vertical stab wound, which is most consistent with assault, and it was 4 inches deep and 3.4 inches long.
Permission to retrieve, Your Honor?
You may.
Now, could you please describe the wound for me and for the court?
Right. It was 4 inches deep. It was 3.4 inches long. It had bruising to one side of it, indicating a hilt. It was smooth on the top, ragged on the bottom, and from the imprints in the wound tissue underneath the skin, it was thrust from right to left.
What did this direction of the wound indicate?
Well, it indicated a right-handed attacker.
And is the defendant right-handed?
Yes, she is.
Was there bruising around the wound?
Yes, there was bruising to one side of the wound.
And what does this bruising show?
Well, knives often have hilts. When the entire blade of the knife is thrust into the skin, this causes the hilt to, touch the skin of the victim, resulting in a bruise. From this, we can conclude that the blade must have been 4 inches, since the wound was 4 inches deep. Now, the hilt bruising was also only to one side. While knives commonly have two-sided hilts, folding knives rarely have a hilt, and if they do, it's usually, almost always, a single-sided hilt. Since it was a single-sided hilt that inflicted this bruise, it's very likely that it was a folding knife.
And did you test any similar knives?
Yes, I was brought a Borland 550 serrated edge folding knife by the detective to test.
And how did you test this knife?
I stabbed a piece of flesh like silicone with it and compared the two imprints.
What did these tests show?
The serration patterns, the size, shape, hilt bruising, all of it was virtually identical to that sustained by Ms. Becca Abels.
Now, did you find any chemicals in the wound?
No, I did not.
Should there have been?
No, while I know that the defense's expert, Mrs. Sharp, is bringing this up to rule out the defendant's knife in the case because she was seen to have been spraying it with quick dry. Quick dry is a sticky substance that does not easily wash out, and so it doesn't have to be left in the wound or anywhere near it. It's only a possibility, not something that has to happen.
Did you find anything else in or near the wound?
Yes, 4 inches above and 3 inches to the right of Miss Abels' navel were bright blue American Pima cotton fibers.
Did you?
Yes.
Excuse me, continue.
These fibers were in a spot that is consistent with if the attacker had leaned in to stab Miss Becca Abels, and they would have been easier to come off if the shirt was long-sleeved.
Did you test these fibers?
Yes.
And what did you test them with?
I tested them against a bright blue American Pima cotton shirt from Ochio Grosso brought to me by the detective.
And what did these tests show?
Well, the fibers were exactly the same.
And did Reagan Bushel own a blue American Pima cotton shirt?
Yes, to my knowledge, he was wearing it on the night of the attack.
Your Honor, I would now like to approach the witness as well as been pre-marked as Exhibit C and represent the opposing counsel. Please tell me what this is.
This is a laboratory report that was run on Miss Abels.
And what does it tell you?
It shows her toxicology report the morning she was brought to me.
Your Honor, I would now like to admit this is Exhibit C.
Objection, Your Honor, this is hearsay.
Your Honor, first off, witnesses are allowed to, or expert witnesses are allowed to rely on hearsay in their testimony. Secondly, this is all evidence stipulated in the case packet, and according to the mock trial rules, shall not be questioned of their authenticity.
Response?
Your Honor, this statement asserts that Becca Abels was intoxicated while she was attacked, which is hearsay.
Your Honor, this isn't hearsay. Her blood was tested. It came back.
Objections overruled.
Yeah. Close the jury. Please tell me what the report says.
Yes, it shows Miss Abels' blood alcohol content to be 0.08 and that she did not have any drugs in her system that we checked for.
So was Ms. Abels intoxicated the night of the attack?
Yes.
What role did that play?
Her intoxication, along with the size, shape, serration, as well as the angle of the wound, would have resulted in massive blood loss that would have made her pass out almost immediately and have made it likely that some blood had gone on her attacker.
Need permission to retrieve, Your Honor?
You may.
Now, were there any defensive wounds on Ms. Abels?
No, there were not.
What does this indicate?
Well, there are a few things it can indicate. Now, Miss Abels' guard must have been down. Since she was stabbed from the front, it's very unlikely that she just didn't have time to react. Because she had no defensive wounds, this means that, her guard must have been down and perhaps she knew the person or something of that sort.
Now, lastly, in your expert opinion, did Reagan Bushell's knife commit this attack?
The wound was consistent with the stab mark of a woman
Objection, Your Honor,
559.
this is an opinion on the ultimate issue.
Your Honor, I did not ask her if Reagan Bushell herself stabbed Becca Abels. I asked her if the knife and the evidence supported the knife and that the wound was consistent with Reagan Bushell's knife. Would you please continue?
Yes.
Thank you.
Cross-examination, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Schwartz. Now, you found that at the time of the incident, Becca Abels had a blood alcohol content level of approximately 0.11%, correct?
Yes, she did.
And alcohol levels at this rate can cause someone to have a slow reaction time, right?
Well, alcohol affects different people differently, so I can't really say for certain how much she was impaired.
And when people have little time to react, they don't incur defensive wounds, do they?
Right, but she was stabbed from the front, so if you see someone coming at you with a knife from the front, you're likely to throw up your hands.
but you'd also have to agree with me that it's possible that the lack of defensive wounds found on Miss Abels could have been because of her slowed reaction time from the alcohol.
On that same ticket, you could also say that her guard was down and there were no defensive wounds because she knew her attacker. These are both possibilities.
Now, you found the new Borland 550 serrated folding knife that Detective Shepard gave you was a match for the weapon used to stab Becca Abels, correct?
Yes.
However, you never tested Reagan Bushell's knife, did you?
No, it was stolen the night of the attack.
So you were never able to examine it, were you?
No, but I examined the same model and make that was provided to me by the detective.
But because you never actually examined Reagan Bush's knife, you have no way of knowing whether her knife was exactly the same as this new Borland 550.
Since the model and make were exactly the same, I would assume that there was not significant evidence that would show otherwise in my tests.
Now, Miss Bushell's knife wasn't new, was it?
No, it wasn't.
In fact, it was a few years old.
Right.
And she frequently used it.
Yes.
So it's possible that the serration pattern on Miss Bushell's knife could have been different from the Borland 550 that Detective Shepard gave you.
Well, it depends. Reagan obviously cared a lot about her knife, spraying it with quick dry on the night in question. She probably took good care of it and maybe made sure that the serration patterns would not change. Honestly, it's hard to tell, but the ultimate point is that the serration patterns changing would not have caused a significant change in the test that I conducted, so they would still be a match.
So because you never tested Reagan Bushell's knife, you cannot confirm or deny that it had the same serration pattern, can you?
I can't confirm or deny, but the serration pattern change would not have been significant enough to incur different results.
Now, you would also have to agree with me that it's possible that other knives, other than a new Borland 550, could have caused Becca Abels' wound, correct?
This is actually an interesting topic, because what we know about the knife is that it's 4 inches and it has a single-sided hilt mark. While many knives, as I earlier said, while many knives have a double-sided hilt, folding knives rarely have one, and when they do, they almost always have a single-sided hilt. So I would actually say that a single-sided hilt is relatively rare, really, if we're talking about this.
But it's still possible that a knife that had the same serration pattern and was the same dimensions as the Borland 550 could have caused that wound, couldn't it?
Right, it's just interesting to note that Miss Reagan
So
Bushell's
that's the
knife
answer
was
to my
also...
question?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you tested the outside of Becca's wound for foreign material, correct?
Yes.
You tested her clothing as well,
Yes.
and you found no traces of quick dry spray.
There didn't need to be any quick dry there.
But isn't it true that it's possible that if Reagan Bushell's knife was used to stab Becca Abels, there certainly could have been traces of quick dry spray found on her clothing?
It's just as possible that it wouldn't have come off, since it's very hard to wash off and it doesn't come off easily.
Now, you found the fibers that Detective Shepard gave you were a match for the fibers found on Becca Abels.
Right, from a long sleeved Ocho shirt.
So you never actually tested the fibers from Reagan Bushell's shirt to the fibers on Becca Abels.
No, because that shirt was conveniently incinerated before the detective could get to Miss Bushell.
So you can't confirm or deny whether or not the fibers found on Miss Bushell's shirt were the same as the ones found on Miss Abels.
The detective provided me with a shirt that was the exact same model and make as the shirt that Miss Bushell was wearing. While it wasn't the exact same shirt, I'm sure you would agree that fashion lines try to keep their shirts relatively the same, since they want everyone to have the same ability to wear, whatever shirt they want to wear. I don't understand why you're trying to bring up the fact that I didn't test her actual shirt, because the shirt that I tested is made of the same fibers that her shirt would have been made of.
Also, you have no way of knowing what brands of clothing those fibers came from, right?
They're Ocho fibers. They're American Pima cotton.
And you don't know whether the fibers found on Becca Abels were from Ocho, do you? They could have come from other manufacturers and clothing lines.
I guess they could have, but they just happened to match exactly to the fibers of the shirt of a same model of shirt that Miss Bushell was wearing the night of the attack.
Now, you have no way of knowing exactly when those fibers were transferred, do you?
Well, no, but their placement was most consistent with them being transferred when somebody leaned in to stab her.
But there's no evidence to dispute the theory that those fibers could have been transferred at Shark's Organic Brewery, is there?
I guess you could say that, but it's even more likely that they would have been transferred when the attacker was leaning into stab her due to their placement.
But that was a yes to my question.
That's a possibly to your question.
And isn't it Dr. Sharp's theory that there are many different possibilities as to where those fibers could have been transferred?
Dr. Sharp disagrees with a lot of my theories. However, I stand by my idea that the placement of those fibers was where they would have been if the attacker leaned in to stab her and had a long sleeve shirt would have made it even more easily transferable.
Now, you have no way of knowing exactly how those fibers were transferred, do you?
Since I was not following Ms. Becca Abels around on the night of the attack, no, I don't know exactly how those were transferred.
And isn't it Dr. Sharp's theory that those fibers could have been transferred in many different ways, right?
She might think that. That doesn't mean I do, or that is correct.
But that is her opinion, yes.
Am I testifying to Ms. Sharp's opinion on this matter?
Yes, you're allowed to do that.
All right, sure. I'm sure she thinks that.
Now, you also have no way of knowing exactly from who those fibers came from, do you?
No, but they were consistent with the same shirt that Ms. Bushel was wearing the night of the attack.
But you have no way of knowing the height of her attacker, do you?
No.
And those fibers could have come from any of the 5,000 people attending the festival.
Any of those 5,000 people that directly interacted with Ms. Becca Abels and touched her in the same place that those fibers were found.
But it's possible, isn't it?
Well, we'd have to know how many people interacted with Ms. Becca Abels. It's my knowledge that Ms. Bushel was known to interact with Ms. Becca Abels, which puts her at a very vulnerable position.
But you have no idea who else had interacted with Ms. Abels and whether they were wearing that same shirt, besides Ms. Bushel.
Like I earlier said, I didn't follow her around the night of the attack. However, that shirt was very expensive, and American Pima cotton fibers, that kind of cotton is used in less than 5% of shirts.
Now, you also have no way of knowing exactly...
Your Honor, she's run out of time.
I apologize, Your Honor, I didn't see the time card. Thank you. If there are further questions at this time.
Yes, Your Honor. In short, could you please describe the knife one more time?
It was 4 inches long, it was serrated, and it had a one-sided.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Your Honor, I'm just simply trying to re-clarify for the court and clear up some misconceptions in the defense.
All right, overruled, but move on.
Thank you. Once again.
It was 4 inches long, it had a 4-inch long blade, it was serrated, and it had a one-sided hilt.
And what knife matched this description?
The Borland 550 serrated edge folding knife.
And did the defendant own a Borland 550 serrated edge folding knife?
Yes, it was then lost on the night in question.
And is it probable that the fibers found in Ms. Abel's wound were transferred from the blue sheer Grosso shirt one by
Yes, and they're also consistent with where they would have been if the attacker had leaned in to stab her.
Thank you. Now, one more time, in your professional expert opinion, did Ms. Bushel's knife, or the defendant's knife, make this attack?
Yes, it was consistent.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state rests.
You may stand down. Are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Sharp to the stand.
Sure, you are under oath. You may proceed.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, my name is Jen Sharp.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm Chief of Emergency Care at Emerald City Hospital. I oversee the hospital's emergency room. I treat the most serious of injuries, including gunshots and especially stab wounds, which I've treated hundreds of.
Your Honor, assuming sideways, normally we would lay the foundation to this witness's expertise. However, because both parties have already stipulated that she is an expert, we ask that the court just take note that she is an expert in medical injuries and forensic science.
No objection, Your Honor.
So noted.
Dr. Sharp, why are you here today?
I was contacted by the defense to examine the case of Becca Abel's stabbing.
Did you rely on any information during your examination?
I relied on all the case materials provided, including witness statements, stipulated facts, and official police and medical reports.
And after reviewing all of this information, were you able to come to any conclusions?
I was. The evidence that I examined led me to discover numerous problems with the conclusion that Reagan Bushell is the one who attacked and injured Becca Abels.
Now, were there any specific pieces of evidence that led you to this conclusion?
Well, there were multiple aspects of my examination that led me to this conclusion, but the primary problem was the evidence surrounding the knife.
What was the problem with the evidence surrounding the knife?
Well, all we know about the knife is that it was 4 inches long and had a serrated blade, and there was nothing particularly distinct about the hilt mark.
And why was this significant?
Well, countless knife manufacturers create blades that are 4 inches long.
Judging her lack of personal knowledge, she has been stipulated as a forensics expert, but not a knife expert.
Response, Your Honor. Assuming sidebar, this witness has been tendered as an expert in medical injuries. This witness would have the expertise of knowing knife injuries and different types of weapons if she analyzes stab wounds.
Your Honor, she has a hard time, or she is stipulated as a medical expert, but not as a knife expert, and she cannot describe the actual details of the blade other than the fact that it was serrated and 4 inches.
I think the question pending, she can answer. I'll overrule. It goes to the weight of her testimony, but you'll certainly have the opportunity to examine that on cross.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you like me to repeat my question?
Yes, please.
Why was this significant?
Well, countless knife manufacturers create blades that are serrated and are 4 inches long. And so, even looking at the wound, blade, and serration pattern, a sufficient number of knives cannot be ruled out with adequate certainty.
And were there any other problems you encountered with the knife during your examination?
Well, yes. The medical examiner in this case used a brand new model Borland 550. A brand new model is an inadequate substitute for Miss Bushell's actual knife.
Why was it an inadequate substitute?
Well, Miss Bushell's knife was a few years old, and she used it quite frequently, which means that the serration pattern could have been changed over time by wear and tear. The new model matching the wound actually decreases the likelihood that it was Miss Bushell's knife that inflicted this injury.
Did you discover any other problems throughout your examination?
Yes, earlier the night of the attack, Miss Bushell cleaned her knife with quick dry spray, which dries on contact and leaves a thin film to prevent the blade from rusting. However, there were no foreign materials found in Becca Abel's wound.
What does this mean?
Well, the quick dry spray should have at least been partially removed by Becca's blood and flesh, if not by her shirt and sweater. And you would expect to see at least traces of quick dry spray around Becca Abel's.
Now, did you use any specific pieces of evidence to form any other conclusions in this case?
Yes, I reviewed the laboratory report of Becca Abels and found some interesting discoveries.
Your Honor, I am now approaching the witness with Prosecution Exhibit 3. How did you use this document in your investigation?
Well, as stated earlier, Becca Abels had a blood alcohol level of 0.08, which, given her height of 5'2" and only 112 pounds, means that her reaction time could have been greatly slowed due to the amount of alcohol that she had ingested earlier that night.
And how does this information relate to who could have stabbed Becca Abels?
Well, it's very possible that Becca Abels was stabbed from the front and had such a delayed reaction time that she could not raise her arms to defend herself. This would explain her lack of defensive wounds, along with Dr. Schwartz's possibility that she knew her attacker.
Now, did you encounter any other problems during your examination?
Yes, the shirt that Reagan Bushell was wearing that night was never tested, and all we know about the fibers found on Becca were that they were bright blue American Pima cotton, and there's no way of knowing how these fibers were transferred and when or where.
Do you know the different ways that fibers can be transferred to someone else?
Oh yes, there are many, many ways that these fibers could have been transferred. Even assuming that they came from Miss Bushell's Ocho Grosso shirt, the evidence does not support the conclusion that they must have been transferred during the attack.
How come?
Well, it's very possible that these fibers were transferred earlier when Reagan Bushell touched Becca's shoulder at Shark's Organic Brewery. And given as they were friends, it's possible that they could have been transferred simply on another day.
Is it possible that those fibers could have been transferred from someone other than Reagan Bushel?
There are 5,000 people at this festival, and many shirts have American Pima cotton in them. It's possible that they came from simply another person.
And what does that mean?
Well, it means that there are just too many unknowns in this case to have any conclusive, decisive possibility. We just don't know.
Now, with all of this information, were you able to come to any final conclusions about this case?
I was. I believe, in my professional opinion, that the forensic evidence in this case is inconsistent with Reagan Bushel being the attacker. There is an alternate explanation for each piece of evidence, and some of the evidence doesn't even circumstantially support the fact that the idea that Reagan Bushel attacked and injured Becca Abels.
Your Honor, opinion, she's testifying, ultimate opinion, she's testifying to who stabbed Becca Abels, not the evidence supporting the knife or the factors surrounding the wound.
Response, Your Honor? I was simply asked, the witness was simply stating that with the evidence that she saw, it is not conclusive. She's not saying that Reagan Bushel stabbed Becca Abels. She's just simply saying what the evidence shows.
Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat my question?
Yes, please.
Were you able to come to any final conclusions about this case after reviewing it?
Yes, in my professional opinion, the forensic evidence in this case is inconsistent with Reagan Bushel being the attacker. There is an alternate explanation for each piece of evidence, and some of the evidence doesn't even circumstantially support the conclusion that Reagan Bushel assaulted and injured Becca Abels. There just isn't enough conclusive evidence in this case.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
And Dr. Sharp, you said the knife used in the attack was a 4-inch serrated blade, correct?
The wound is consistent with a blade that was serrated and 4 inches long, yes.
So that's a yes to my question.
Oh, yes.
And the defendant owned a 4-inch serrated blade, isn't that correct?
A Borland 550 does have a serrated blade and is 4 inches long.
And actually, the defendant owned a Borland 550.
Yes.
Now, there was bruising around the room, correct?
Yes, there was.
And this bruising indicated a single-sided hilt, correct?
Well, it wasn't particularly distinct bruising around the
But it's
wound.
possible this bruising did indicate a single-sided hilt from the knife.
It's a possibility, but not the possibility.
That's a yes to my question, it is possible.
Oh, yes.
And the Borland 550 knife happens to have a single-sided hilt, correct?
Yes, along with many other blades.
Now, there were blue American Pima cotton fibers found near the wound, correct?
Yes, there were.
And these fibers were tested and matched those from a blue American Pima cotton Ochio Grosso shirt, isn't that correct?
American Pima cotton is consistent with Reagan's shirt, along with many other shirts.
But it did match those from the blue American Pima cotton Ochio Grosso shirt, correct?
Yes.
And Reagan Bushel owned a blue American Pima cotton Ochio Grosso shirt, correct?
Yes.
And he wore it on the night of the attack, correct?
She did.
Now, Dr. Sharp, Miss Abels was intoxicated at the time of the attack, correct?
According to the laboratory report, she had a blood alcohol level of 0.08.
And this could have caused a transfer of blood from the victim to the attacker, correct?
It's certainly a possibility.
And isn't it convenient that none of the blood was found on the defendant's clothes or in his car because he had them extensively cleaned and threw away the clothes, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And lastly, you accepted $3,500 to appear here today, isn't that correct?
It's my normal flat fee that I've had for 24 years. It's pretty common in my field.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. You may step forward. Who will be your witness?
The defense calls A.G. Proud.
Ralph, you are on.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is A.G. Prout.
What do you do for a living?
Well, right now I work at a small publishing firm editing manuscripts, and I recently graduated from Uni with a bachelor's in literature and a minor in political science.
How are you related to this case?
I used to hang out with Becca Abels and Reagan Bushel a lot.
What was your relationship like with this case?
We were pretty good friends. We would hit up parties together pretty often, and after our freshman year at Wheeler, we split the rented apartment off campus.
How did you get along with Ms. Abels?
I could tolerate her, I guess. I knew that Reagan had been friends with her before coming to Wheeler, and we would hit up parties together as well, and she would tag along. But there was always this pretty annoying girl named Devin Lynn. Follow her.
Objection, Your Honor. One, to the relevance of the partying that we keep talking about over and over again. I don't believe that's relevant to know how this witness knows the different witnesses in this case.
Relevance?
I'm simply explaining the foundation for the witness to testify to events following through this trial, because he must establish that he knows which of the witnesses are and how he is related to them is important in finding.
All right, objection sustained. Just to move on, you made that relationship clear.
May we move to strike down?
It's very clear.
What is this relationship between, what is Mr. Hinkler?
Excuse me?
I'm confused as to what is Mr. Hinkler, what is.
Testimony regarding the partying that went on, we had the relationship established with the partying portion of that administration.
All right. Now, could you describe Ms. Lynn, please?
Well, my impression of Miss Lynn was that she was pretty attached to Becca, and she would always follow her around and make some excuse to get Becca away from Reagan and I.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance to this, why we're talking about how much Devin follows Ms. Abels around. I don't understand the relevance in this.
Your Honor, the relationship between Mr. Prout and Ms. Lynn is important in this case to understanding, assuming sidebar, why Mr. Prout would also have a possible motive to stab Ms. Lynn.
Overruled. You can proceed.
Now, did Ms. Lynn ever antagonize you anymore?
She would insult Reagan and I sometimes.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor, to the statements that were made. Although they're not making the statements known what the actual statements were, they're referring to the statements that are out of court.
Okay, overruled. Go ahead.
And how did you insult him?
I mean, she called us things like druggies and losers, and it made me angry.
Objection, Your Honor, that's hearsay. He stated exactly what she said in this case.
Well, he didn't address an out-of-court statement specifically, so just the content of the statement, so overruled.
And how did it make you feel?
It made me angrier than I would like to admit, but there's nothing I could really do about it.
And how did you insult Ms. Bushel?
Well, she never really showed any reaction, and I guess that's pretty much Reagan. She's always been pretty level-headed.
What makes you say that?
Well, we used to be on a co-ed basketball team together, and even when things got pretty heated, she would always be
Objection, Your
there.
Honor, relevance to why we're talking about a basketball game.
Assuming sidebar, I'm simply trying to show that Ms. Bushel was less likely to be antagonized and less likely to resort to violence than when compared to Mr. Prout.
No, it's not improper character evidence, Your Honor, to show how Miss Reagan Bushel is out of this court. They're showing her character, and in this case would be improper character.
Overruled. You can answer.
What makes you say that Ms. Bushel was level-headed?
Well, like I said, during pretty heated basketball games, she would always step in and explain to people that it was just a game, and even when things got pretty heated at parties sometimes, when people were drunk and belligerent, she'd always step in and calm things down.
All right. Now, I'd like to talk to you about April 27, 2011. Did anything significant happen to you on that day?
Yeah, that was the day that Becca and Devin confronted me in the university coffee shop, and I learned that Reagan had apparently plagiarized a paper I wrote for a political science class.
How did Ms. Abels confront you?
Well, I was grabbing a snack in the coffee shop, and she and Devin Lynn just barged in and started screaming about plagiarism and getting Reagan and I expelled.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, this has already been testified to by Ms. Devin Lynn earlier in trial.
That's response, Your Honor?
You may.
That doesn't make this not hearsay. This witness is not an expert witness, therefore you cannot rely on other people's testimonies in this case where you cannot bring this up.
Okay, sustained. Let's move on. And then
Now, did you know at the time why Ms. Abels was confronting you?
Not really. I was pretty confused when she left before I could ask her to explain anything, and I never knew that Reagan had plagiarized one of my papers.
Well, were you concerned about possibly being expelled?
I definitely was.
Could you elaborate more on why you were concerned?
my family doesn't have the financial safety net that Reagan's does, and I was afraid that if I was expelled, I was going to spend the rest of my life flipping burgers, and I was pretty
No,
convinced
that's
that...
out of the scope of the facts. The objection is out of the scope of the witness. It never states that in his affidavit. Therefore, in this direct, it's out of his, it's an unfair exculpation.
Your Honor, this is a likely inference from his affidavit. He's just stating an example of why he was afraid of being expelled.
Now, were you upset with Ms. Bushel about this incident?
I mean, I was kind of confused as to why she would have taken one of my papers, but she wasn't the one trying to get me expelled.
When was the next time you talked to Ms. Bushel?
It was that Friday, the 29th of April.
Under what circumstances did you two talk?
Well, a couple months prior, we planned to go to this local music festival called the Woolly Wizard, and it was happening that weekend, so we were going to get together and go check it out.
Did you ever plan on attending with anyone other than Ms. Bushel?
Reagan said that she had invited Becca, and if Becca was coming, then I had no doubt that Devin would be as well.
What time did you get to the festival?
About 6 p.m.
And what did you do when you got there?
Well, we set up camp, and then I started drinking beer, and Reagan just sat around and kind of cleaned up and fiddled with her night.
What occurred after you set up camp?
We walked around the festival and checked out some of the shows, and about 9 o'clock, 9:30, we ran into Becca and Devin at Shark's Organic Brewery.
What happened then?
Well, I wasn't too excited to see them because apparently there was some kind of conversation going on between Becca and Reagan, and I really wanted no part of it. I didn't think that was the time or the place to deal with the plagiarism issue.
So what happened after the confrontation at Sharks?
Reagan said that she would text me later, and she
Can I
needed
just
some
say, Your Honor,
time.
to what Reagan is saying in this case?
I'll rephrase, Your Honor. When was the next time you talked to Reagan?
She texted me around 11, and apparently we needed to go, and someone had stolen some of her camping gear out of her car, and she sounded pretty upset.
And what time did you end up leaving?
It was 11:15. Reagan dropped me off at our apartment, and she went to go stay at her parents' house.
Is that the end of your involvement in this case?
Oh, no. The next morning I learned that Becca had been stabbed at the festival, and a detective showed up at the apartment to interview Reagan. Reagan wasn't there, so the detective ended up talking to me instead.
As far as you know, were you ever considered as a suspect in this case?
I never got that impression.
Thank you. No further questions.
Very much. Now, earlier you testified that you had no idea of Reagan plagiarizing one of your papers. Is that correct?
I never let her plagiarize one of my papers, no.
Did you testify earlier that you never knew about this, or was that just...
I didn't know that she had plagiarized anything of mine. I never gave her permission to use a paper in one of her classes.
But at one point, you had suspicions of her going behind your back, going onto your computer, and taking a paper off of your computer. Is that true?
I didn't have suspicions, but it was possible because I left my computer unlocked a lot.
So you thought of this in your head as a situation that could have happened, yes?
It was certainly possible.
Let's talk about the day of April 29th. You got to the festival, right, at around 6.
That's true.
And you got there, and Reagan started cleaning or setting up campsite, yes?
Yep.
And she used her Borland 559 to set up the campsite, yes?
She used it to cut the tags off of some equipment.
And once she was done with it, you didn't see where she put it, isn't that true?
I wasn't paying attention then.
So you didn't see her put it in her car, did you?
No, but that's where she usually keeps it.
So that's a yes to my question?
Yep.
So it's a possibility that she could have put it in her jacket, she could have hid it somewhere on her body so she could use it later, isn't that true?
Sure.
Then, what was she wearing that day? Just for clarification.
A blue shirt.
A blue Oshio Grosso shirt?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Then, later that night, you got back to the campsite, and Reagan was wearing different clothing, isn't that true?
Yeah, she had taken down the campsite, and whenever we take down campsites, it's a lot of work, and so I had no doubt that she was probably pretty sweaty. Plus, walking around a music festival at a campground is also pretty
That's a
dirty.
yes, is my question.
Absolutely, yeah.
So she was not wearing a blue Oshio Grosso shirt anymore.
It wasn't.
No further questions.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You step down. And who's your next witness?
Your Honor, this time the defense calls Reagan
Hello, my name is Reagan Bushell.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I was a student at Willard University until I was arrested close to the end of my senior year. I was charged with stabbing my best friend, Becca Abels.
How did you meet Becca Abels?
Becca and I had pretty much grown up together. I really did consider her my best friend. We used to always study together a lot, and we competed on the same types of teams in high school. She was a really important person in my life.
What was your relationship like with Becca Abels during your senior year of college?
Well, it was going pretty good, but then Becca met this girl named Devin Lynn. I just don't understand Devin. Everything Becca does, Devin has to go do. It's like she's fixated on her.
How did Becca's relationship with Devin affect your relationship with Becca?
I mean, it was okay, but I can think of many times when Devin would call me a loser to my face.
Objection, hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
You may.
These statements are not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. We're not trying to prove that Reagan Bushell is a loser.
Your Honor, she is, however, trying to prove that Devin Lynn called Reagan a loser.
Response, Your Honor?
Overruled. You may inquire.
So, how did Devin's relationship with Becca affect your relationship with Becca?
Well, like I said, it was okay, but I can think of many times when Devin would call me a loser to my face. So whenever she was around Becca, I would just try not to hang out with them. And everything was going okay until I did something really stupid my senior year.
What did you do?
My parents were hounding me about my grades, that B- wasn't acceptable. So I submitted an edited version of a paper that A.G. Prout wrote, and I got Becca involved in it too.
How'd you do that?
Becca was having a hard time with the class, so I thought I'd be helping her out, and I sent her the paper, but she said she didn't want to use it. She didn't want to ruin her chance at getting the Lion Prize.
And what's the Lion Prize?
It's an award given to a student with exceptional integrity and good grades. The winner gets a fellowship and some money. After I heard about it from Becca through the email, I applied for it. I thought it would be the kind of thing that would get my parents off my back. I thought she wouldn't mind, since when we were in high school, we usually went after the same
Objection,
scholarships.
Your Honor, narrative response.
It's responsive overruled.
So, what was the Lion Prize?
It's an award given to a student based on exceptional grades. and
Objection,
integrity.
asked and answered.
Let's move on to statement.
So, did Becca ever find out about your application for the Lion Prize?
Well, on April 26th, I found out that Becca and I were both finalists for the Lion Prize. And the next day, I found out that she was going to try and get A.G. and I kicked out of school with the paper I sent.
Objection, Your Honor. The only way the witness could know this is through hearsay.
Response, Your Honor? This does not prove the truth of the matter asserted, as multiple witnesses already testified that they told Reagan Bushell, specifically A.G. Prout. So we're not using this to prove the truth of the matter asserted, but to show why Reagan Bushell took further actions. I'm laying foundation to establish a line of question.
Response.
Your Honor, this witness is not allowed to testify to what previous witnesses testified.
All right, well, I believe the foundation being laid, I'll overrule the objection.
So, to your knowledge, did Becca ever find out about Reagan Bushell, your application for the Lion Prize?
Yeah, I learned that Becca was going to try and get A.G. and I kicked out of school with the paper I sent her last fall.
How did you feel about Becca's intentions?
I didn't understand them. If I failed a course or got expelled, I would lose my chances at getting a trust fund that my grandpa had set up for me. So over the course of the next week, I tried to get in touch with Becca so we could talk about her problems.
Did you manage to get in touch with Becca?
Yeah, I finally did on April 29, 2011 at the Woolly Wizard Music Festival. A.G. and I got some camping gear and we got to the campsite and parked around 6 p.m.
What, if anything, did you do at the campsite?
I used my knife that my uncle gave me in 2007 to cut some tags off camping gear. I use it pretty often when I go camping. After that, I cleaned it with some quick dry spray and then I put it back in my car. And then A.G. and I took the South Road to the festival.
Did you ever see Becca Abels while you were at the festival?
Yeah, a little after 9, I checked my phone and saw on Totalink that she was at Shark's Organic Brewery.
Would you recognize a copy of that totaling page if it were shown to you today?
I would.
Your Honor, I am now approaching opposing counsel who had previously been marked as Exhibit F. Permission to approach the witness.
You may.
Ms. Bushel, do you recognize this document? I do. Is it a fair and accurate copy of the original?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense would like to offer Exhibit F and evidence as defense Exhibit 1.
Your Honor, the state objects. This is an out-of-court statement and therefore hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
You may.
Permission to approach with a copy.
You may. Your response.
Now, Your Honor, this is not hearsay because this document does not make an assertion, as you can clearly see. All this document says is who was at the festival at 9:19 on April 29th. This does not say any statement. It's simply an electronically recorded document of whose phone was at what location.
Your Honor, may I approach for a moment?
You may.
If you look right here in the red box, there's all the things you can administer right there.
Response, Your Honor?
You may.
It says Beck S25 checked in at Sharps Organic Brewery at 9:19 a.m. That simply says that Becca Abels' cellular device was at this location.
All right. Overruled. I'll allow the exhibit.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to publish copies to the jury.
You may.
So, what did you do after you looked at this photo exchange?
After that, AG and I headed to Sharks Organic Brewery. When I got there, I saw Becca standing with Devin. I tried to call after her. I had to yell because it was so loud in there, but to me, it seemed like she didn't want to hear what I had to say, and she walked out of the bar.
What did you do when Becca walked out of the bar?
I ran after her. It was so loud from all the commotion. I had to tap her on the shoulder. I wasn't sure if she could hear me or not. I asked her what I had done. It was so loud from all the commotion, and there were so many people. We were really close to each other. I mean, we were practically touching. We had to yell just to hear each other talk.
What did you say to Becca?
I told her about the Lion Prize. I thought she was upset about it, so I told her that I would withdraw my application. I was sorry. I thought she wouldn't care.
And how did Becca react to what you said?
She said she'd think about it.
Objection, hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
We're not using the statements to prove the truth of the matter, sir. We're using them to show the state of mind of the defendant at the time these statements were said. We're showing that the defendant did not have the mindset to commit this crime because his statement assured the defendant that Becca Abels was not going to report her to the school.
So that would require the statement sustained. Objection sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. So what did you do after you talked with Becca Abels?
Well, afterwards, I walked back into the bar and told AG Prout that I wanted some time to think on my own. The conversation with Becca had left me exhausted emotionally. I just needed some time to think by myself.
What did you do while you were by yourself?
I hung around some stages around the southeast end of the festival from about 9:50 to 10:20. But after a while, all the commotion, I got tired, so I took the south road and got back to my campsite at 10:45.
Miss Bushel, were you ever by the northwest corner of the festival?
No, I was nowhere close to there.
And what did you do when you got back to the campsite?
Well, I discovered that some of my camping gear gotten stolen. Stuff like canned foods, my mini stove, and the knife that I had used. And I felt really stupid, so I just texted AG that it was time to go home.
What, if anything, did you do while you were waiting for AG to come back to the campsite?
I took down the campsite. My clothes got really dirty, so I changed out of them and put them in the bag, as I always do when I travel. AG got there about 10 minutes later, and then I took him to the apartment that we shared, and I went to my parents' house.
Why did you go to your parents' house?
Over the past week, I've just been really stressed out. I just wanted to get a place where I could relax and be at peace, but things got so much worse. The next morning, I saw that Becca had been found stabbed at the campsite, and she was in the hospital unresponsive.
What did you do when you found out what happened to Becca?
cried in my room alone for hours. I kept thinking if I had just gone after her, or if none of this had ever happened, maybe she wouldn't have gotten hurt. But I couldn't think like that. I had to get my mind off of it.
What, if anything, did you do to try to get your mind off?
I did some chores. I threw out some old clothes I had, including the ones I wore the night of the festival. I mean, the last thing I want to think about when I wear that shirt or those shorts is the night my best friend got stabbed.
Did you do anything else?
Yeah, I got my SUV detailed, the interior and the exterior. It's pretty dirty after camping, something I normally do, but if only I left it the way it was, maybe I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in now.
What makes you say that?
Well, that day, a detective came to my house. She asked me some questions about Becca and what happened that night, and I told her everything. I even let her and the forensics team search my house and my SUV, but I was arrested Sunday evening.
Miss Bushel, did you stab Becca Eagles?
Of course not. I've known Becca since I was a little kid, and even when we were in college, we started pulling away, but she's always been my best friend. Becca's like my sister. I love her.
Thank you. No further questions at this time. Permission to approach the treaty.
You may. Ross?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Now, Ms. Bushel, you had a trust fund, correct?
I did?
And in this trust fund, you had $20 million, correct?
Yeah, it was something my grandpa had set up for me. I had to get it within 4 years with at least a 3.5 grade point average.
And if you had gotten expelled from your college, you would not have received the money in that trust fund. Is that also correct?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge and lack of foundation as to how this witness would know whether or not if she was reported to counsel, she would be necessarily expelled from school, since that's only a conditional possibility.
Your Honor, my question was if the witness had been expelled from college, she would not have gotten the money in the trust fund. It is one of the stipulations of the trust fund that she has to graduate from college with a 3.5 GPA.
Okay.
If you had been expelled from college, you would not have gotten the money in the trust fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a clause in the trust fund that said if I didn't get it, then, well, I'm sorry, if I was expelled or told the courts that I wouldn't get the money.
Do you happen to be aware of the way your college deals with cheating?
Well, after what had happened with Becca, I talked to a resident, Kai Maurer, to learn more about the honor code.
Did you learn anything from that conversation, like that you would have been expelled had you been found to have cheated?
Objection, opposing counsel's answer or question calls for hearsay.
Repeat the question.
I asked her if had she been found guilty of cheating, would she have been expelled?
Over.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
That was not opposing counsel's question. Opposing counsel asked if he had learned it, if this witness learned anything from Kai Maurer.
Your Honor, what came after that was the statement I just gave. If you will let me rephrase, I'll ask that specific question without the kind of related stuff.
The initial question that you objected to, that objection sustained. I think he asked a new question.
Well, it was...
Or rephrased the question.
Yes, sir.
Let's move on. All right.
Yes,
Your
sir.
initial objection is sustained.
If you had been found guilty of cheating, would you have been expelled?
If I had been found guilty, yes, most likely. Our school's very strict about the honor code.
And about this cheating, you got a paper from A.G. Proud, correct?
I did.
And you sent this paper to Ms. Akins, is that also correct?
Yeah, she was having a hard time with class. I thought I'd be helping her out.
And she didn't think that this would really help. As a matter of fact, she was upset about this, is that also correct?
She said through the email that she didn't want to jeopardize her chance of getting the line in her house.
So you represented to the college at that time work that was not yours. You represented a lie, correct?
No, I put forth. I did. It was a stupid decision, and I regret it, but I did.
But you're being honest now, is that also correct? You're telling this court that you're being honest now.
I mean, I regret what I did. It's a bad decision.
Okay, moving on. So you try again and again to have conversations with Ms. Akins, is that correct?
Yeah, it was weird for her not to talk to me.
But she at first was not responding to you, correct?
Yeah.
So then you found
decided prior to what had happened between us that we were going to go to the festival. And I saw on Photo-Link the previous week that she was still planning on going.
So you went there to go talk to her, right?
I
In
thought,
part, at least?
I'm sorry.
In-
I,
Go ahead.
I thought it would be a good time for us to talk, the atmosphere.
So you go to the festival and you go to this Sharks Organic Brewery, is that right?
Yeah, a little after 9.
And you talk to her and you and her have a conversation, right?
We did.
And the only two people who hear that conversation are you and the Staples, right?
I'm pretty sure it was really loud.
And right now, you're on trial and the Staples is in a coma, is that also correct?
Objection to this fact is stipulated, Your Honor.
All right, stand. Everybody right after this way.
So you leave after this conversation, you go off on your own, right?
Yeah, I told AG Prout that I wanted some time to think by myself, and then I went to some stages on the southeast end of the festival.
Did you speak to anyone during this time you were off on your own?
No, I wanted time to think by myself.
And shortly after you spent this time totally by yourself with no one else around, you decided to leave the festival.
There were people around, we were at a concert, but I got tired of all the commotion, so I took the South Road back to my campsite.
Despite having set up a campsite, you decided to leave after this time spent by yourself, correct?
Yeah, everything that had happened, I was just tired, and I didn't want to be there anymore, so, yeah.
And you get back to the campsite and your knife has mysteriously disappeared, correct?
My car had gotten broken into. It wasn't just my knife, it was my mini stove and canned food, too.
Now, this knife is a Borland 550 knife, correct?
Yeah.
It has a single-sided hilt, correct? It's 4 inches long, correct? And it is serrated, correct?
Right.
And Miss Abel's wound was made by a knife that was 4 inches long, serrated, correct?
I didn't know that information until today.
So you go home, and the next day the next day you find out on the news that Miss Abel's has been stabbed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
And your first response when you find out that Miss Abel's has been stabbed is not to run down to the police station and tell them what you know about that night, is it?
No,
Your first response was to start destroying everything that you had on you the night of the festival, correct?
No. First thing that happened was...
You did not, wait, are you testifying today that you did not throw out your clothes and you did not detail your car?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's not the first thing I did.
Okay, so you did throw out your clothes that you wore that night.
I did. They were really dirty, and the last thing I want to think about when I wear that shirt or those shorts is the night my best friend got stabbed.
And you cleaned your car.
I did. It's something I usually do after I go camping.
That shirt, that was a light blue Pima Cotton Oshia Grosso shirt, wasn't it?
It is. I shop at Ocho's pretty often.
Now, you then speak with the detective, right?
Yeah, she came to my house Saturday evening.
And at this point in time, you still have not told the police about your stolen knife, have you?
No.
Where did you get this knife?
I got it from my uncle.
You cared about this knife a lot, but not enough to report it stolen?
I did, but it was a stupid mistake I made leaving my car unlocked, so it didn't make much sense to go ahead and report it.
Was stabbing the Staples also a stupid mistake?
Objection, argumentative.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ready for redirect examination, Your Honor. Ms. Bushel, I'd like to give you the opportunity to fully answer some of the opposing counsel's questions. Why didn't you immediately go to the police when you learned that my was stabbed?
I was so upset. I just sat in my room and cried for hours. I wasn't thinking about what I could do, and I just wanted to get my mind off of it. I couldn't believe what had happened to my best friend.
Why didn't you report your knife as stolen?
It was my fault that I had left the car unlocked, and it was a stupid decision. Plus, it would have just been easier to buy another one.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Just get that. Closing statement?
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to reserve any remaining time for rebuttal. Members of the jury, I'm going to start off, I'm going to tell you the way that it happened, the way everybody agrees what happened, and what the defense is trying to tell you has occurred here. Now, what everybody agrees happened is that Ms. Bushell had a paper that she had plagiarized and that she was using to cheat with. Ms. Bushell sent this paper to Becca Abels, and Becca Abels did not want to use this paper. As a matter of fact, Ms. Abels was going to turn Ms. Bushell in for cheating because Ms. Bushell had suggested using that paper. Then, Ms. Bushell tries, time and time again, gets aggravated trying to get Ms. Abels to reconsider this. Ms. Abels isn't paying any attention to her. So then they finally have the opportunity to talk to each other at this music festival. And once again, Ms. Abels, she starts to walk away. Ms. Bushell, she goes to stop her. Still, though, nothing's really resolved, according to any of the parties. So then Ms. Abels leaves, and Ms. Bushell leaves. We don't hear from Ms. Bushell again for a while, but the next time we hear from Becca Abels, she's been stabbed. She's on the ground, she's bloody, and her best friend, Devin Lynn, comes along and finds her. And Devin Lynn tells the detective, of course, everything that she knows. So then they start to investigate the crime. And what's found out is that Ms. Bushell owns a knife that is 4 inches long, that is serrated, and that has a single-sided hilt. And then what else is found out is that the knife used to stab Ms. Abels was 4 inches long, it was serrated, it had a single-sided hilt. It's found that Ms. Abels has cotton fibers on her from a blue Pima cotton shirt. Ms. Bushell was wearing a blue Pima cotton shirt that night. The next day, Ms. Bushell tells the detective that her knife was stolen and that she heard about on the news about Ms. Abels being stabbed. Well, she never reported this knife stolen. She never said anything about this knife to the police. And what does she do when she finds out her friend has been stabbed? Well, she starts throwing stuff away. She starts throwing away the clothes she wore that night. She starts cleaning her car. Now, let's talk again about the story that the defense wants you to believe. The story that the defense wants you to believe is that this was all a big coincidence. That Ms. Bushell just happened to have been caught cheating. That Ms. Abels just happened to have been about to report her for cheating shortly before the night that Ms. Abels was stabbed. That they just happened to be there together that night, and Ms. Bushell leaves and goes off on her own, and Ms. Abels leaves and goes off on her own, and Ms. Abels is found stabbed, and this is just nobody knows what happened. They also want you to believe that Ms. Abels was so distraught that she starts throwing out clothes. That was her response. Her response was not to go down to the police station and tell them everything she knew about that night. To tell them, oh my God, Becca, she's my friend. I don't know what happened. I remember seeing her at the festival. No, she doesn't do that. She waits for the police to come to her. Members of the jury, the way that this case did happen was this. Ms. Abels was going to stand for integrity. She was going to stand for decency. She was going to stand for honesty. She was going to stand in between Ms. Bushell and $20 million. That's the way this case happened. So what does Ms. Bushell do? She finds out about this, and she has to start getting rid of the evidence. That's why the knife got stolen, disappeared. That's why the shirt was thrown out, and that's why the car was detailed. Having considered this, members of the jury, the only just verdict is guilty on all charges. Thank
Your Honor, members of the jury, the prosecution has told you that the defense is telling you that all this evidence is just a coincidence. The evidence shows you that an incomplete investigation coupled with inconclusive evidence is insufficient to eliminate all reasonable doubt. And with the evidence brought forth today, the prosecution's case is full of reasonable doubt. When Detective Shepard took the stand today, you heard that her entire investigation rested on her interview with Devin Lynn. Now, the prosecution would lead you to believe that it's reasonable to take into account only one witness's testimony, and that it's reasonable to find evidence to support a theory, as Detective Shepard did, instead of finding a theory that supports all of the evidence. And the evidence shows that Detective Shepard inadequately investigated other possible witnesses. You heard that she never thought to include A.G. Prout or any other witness as a suspect in Becca Abel's assault other than Reagan Bushell. And while Detective Shepard searched for who could have stabbed Becca Abels, the evidence shows that her investigation was inadequate and filled with holes. Both experts took the stand today, and they both told you that they cannot say with any degree of certainty when, where, how, and from whom those bright blue American Pima cotton fibers were transferred onto Becca Abel's clothes. Dr. Sharp and Dr. Schwartz have told you that there are many other knives that could have been used to stab Becca Abels, and the evidence shows that the prosecution inadequately investigated those other weapons. While the evidence collected and tested may have been enough to confirm the prosecution's preconceptions, it is still too filled with doubt to eliminate all reasonable doubt. A.G. Prout took the stand today and testified that if Becca Abels went to Student Judicial Affairs Council, then his entire future professional career would have been in shambles. And despite A.G. Prout's future hanging in the balance, and after the confrontation that he had with Becca Abels, Detective Shepard never thought to investigate him as a suspect. We also heard that A.G. Prout and his friend Sasha Fain are sure that they saw Reagan Bushell at the southeast corner of the festival, nowhere near Becca Abels, at the time that she was thought to have been stabbed. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, Detective Shepard decided to take the word of Devin Lynn rather than two other witnesses. When Devin Lynn took the stand today, she openly admitted in court her dislike of Reagan and how she felt that Reagan Bushell was a bad influence and that she was jealous of her relationship with Becca Abels. This self-claimed best friend told you that she would be there for her best friend. But the evidence shows that Devin Lynn left Becca Abels alone at a concert for nearly an hour after she saw her upset. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, Devin Lynn didn't want to be at this festival in the first place. Finally, Reagan Bushell took the stand today and told you that she would never stab Becca Abels, her lifelong friend. The evidence shows that their conversation outside of Shark's Organic Brewery wasn't an argument, and that she only touched Becca Abels' shoulder to get her attention because of the loud noise, not because she wanted to hurt or threaten Becca. You also heard from Reagan Bushell that she was trying to fix their friendship, and she offered to withdraw from the Lion Prize. And the evidence shows that she got rid of her clothes and cleaned her car in an attempt to think of something other than the fact that her best friend was now lying in a hospital. And she wanted to get rid of anything that reminded her of the night that her best friend was stabbed. The burden of proof lies with the prosecution and never leaves their table. And the evidence brought forth today shows that they've been unable to meet that burden of proof. They have failed to prove to you that Reagan Bushell vocally or physically threatened Becca Abels, and they have failed to prove to you that Reagan Bushell assaulted her. They are asking you to disregard the incomplete, inconclusive, and inadequate evidence brought forth by them today. They are asking you to convict Reagan Bushell, but you can only do this if you disregard all of this evidence. They are asking you to disregard the conditional elements if and convict Reagan Bushell. Because a court of law is no place for generalities and assumptions, we ask for you to render the only true and just verdict today, not guilty.
Prosecution may use their remaining time for rebuttal.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Thank you. Members of the jury, the evidence in this case supports Reagan Bushel. Reagan Bushel was the one with the motive, Reagan Bushel was the one with the means, Reagan Bushel was the one with the opportunity. Proud did not have the motive, Lynn did not have the knife, and Lynn was not covered in blood when Detective Shepard found her, even though it had only been shortly after the attack. Considering this, members of the jury, and considering that Ms. Abrams can't be here with us today to tell you her side of the story, we're asking you to be her voice. We're asking you to return the only just verdict, and that is the verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any post-trial motion or matters to be discussed before we end this?
No, Your Honor.
There you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Meeting is closed. All right, we're going to take a few minutes for the scoring judges to calculate their scores, and then we will do our review.
Okay.